up, everyone? This is Mr. Lord, Dr. Professor Darth Joker with this week's view. And this week, I'm gonna give my rankings for every Star Wars movie. And I mean all of them, whether it's the ones that should be considered canon or should not be considered canon, whether it's the ones George Lucas made, the ones Disney made. I'm gonna go into all the rankings, give like basic opinion about each one. And yeah, I thought we were gonna do this after Mandalorian and Grogu released, just rank all of them, so yeah, with all that being said, on with the video. Number 15, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. This is a pile of crap. Like, it is garbage. Like, it's like, ooh, they fly now. I'm like, you had freaking, um, like, you had the Mandalorian, like Super Commandos and Rebels, and that aired before this released. And there have been jet troopers in for the clones, and a lot of stormtrooper armor was heavily inspired by within the story. Obviously, in production wise, it was the clones armor inspired by the stormtroopers. But it's like you've had jet troopers. It's like, oh, they fly now. It's like how retarded are you? Like, I was like, no wonder the New Republic didn't want to be public about supporting the resistance because they're all freaking retarded. I mean, New Republic's retarded too. I mean, freaking demilitarization that let the First Order get an opening. You know, I mean, it's like when the Republic did that after the Sith. Kind of left a void that gave a need for a clone army. Just saying. So demilitarization was a bad idea. I mean, New Republic doesn't exist in this. I mean, and there hasn't been seen any change to the galaxy from that. Shows how effective they were. But yeah, you have what is it like? They have to like CG. You had the CGI Leia because sadly Carrie Fisher passed away. May she rest in peace. Um, and they had of course Leia dies in this like somehow, and you have the whole the force dyad thing that they've never been able to explain. It's like all it is a freaking force bond. That's all you had to say. In Knights Old Republic, you had the bond between Basilisk Shawn and Darth Revan. If they had a force bond, that is all you need to say. Now, yeah, the whole they fought in their through their minds or whatever, and then the whole Death Star remains. I mean, and yes, I know there's some concept art based on some alleged Death Star remains, like it's some moon or whatever. Apparently, that did come from George's outlines. There's a better way to explain that. Like, I don't know, maybe it was just a facility with Death Star parts that weren't installed because, the second one wasn't finished. But no, yeah, the whole, what the Dark Ray, whatever, which, might end up actually happening as a natural conclusion, considering, you know, maybe she is possessed by Palpatine, who somehow returned and who might somehow return again. Gosh. And like, dude, the Kylo Ren and like the random kiss between Kylo Ren and Rey, like it came out of nowhere. It's like if you're gonna put romance in the movie, at least make it logical and not retarded. But you had all the Reylas being, oh, yay, like a bunch of clapping seals. You know, a bunch of seals clapping over a shark coming towards them. I'm like, gosh, like this is so bad. And like Lando just being all depressed, being at some whatever desert planet was. It's like, so is this how you explain this guy not being in in the previous two movies? He's just depressed. He's not like conducting. He's not even running a business like he does like in the EU. Or in the EU, the reason he wasn't involved as much as the other OT characters because he had businesses to run. He didn't really want to get too involved, but he did when he needed to. And you have like, yeah, like it's so stupid. Was it Babu Frick? Where the frick that thing is? Like, and yeah, dude, the with the this horses on the Star Shore that could I don't know tilted slightly to fall. It's like, what's up with the freaking and what she the Ray somehow gets a yellow lightsaber using parts from Luke and Leia's lightsaber. Where did the crystal come from? Like, did she find the Kyber crystal? Was it artificial like Luke's was? Because Luke had his green one was a synthesized crystal due to reasons he couldn't get one, and that like a regular one. And she's like Ray Scott, and so like, she says Ray Scott. No, she is Ray Palpatine. She is Ray Palpatine. She is not Skywalker. And then Finn, gets wasted. Like they Finn, Poe, they're wasted. Like, and it's like, gosh, like such wasted time in this. And it's like 3PO, he like loses very, but then it's like, oh yeah, yeah, no, he gets restored, barely an inconvenience. Chewbacca, it seems to blow up in a race. It seemed like Ray had killed him by blowing up a ship he was on, but no, wrong ship. Somehow he ended up on another ship. I mean, granted, Chewbacca's a guy who in the EU, it took someone had to drop a moon on him in order to kill him. Like someone had to drop a moon on Chewbacca to kill him. So I mean, okay, maybe you could justify it's like, yeah, I mean, the guy had to get a moon dropped on him for him to die, so you know, maybe he could survive his ship. But no, that's not the case. So it's so stupid. And you had Jar Jar Abrams coming who can't make an ending. Yeah, maybe that's not a guy who you should get to write the end of your trilogy. A guy who has said he doesn't know how to write endings. It's like it's a mystery box. Well, I mean, you gotta answer the mystery box. Like you do have to answer some questions, at least enough to have a satisfying end. Yes, there's some things maybe you keep a mystery, but it's like you know, and yet the whole she's like, I am all the Jedi. Like, like what the frick does that mean? Like, what is the point of that? And like, say it's like, I am all the Sith. It's like, okay, so what about the Lost Tribe of the Sith, if they're around? Darth Krayt, if he's around and going by Darth Krayt, um, Lumaya, Vergear, um, you know, any of the dark side spirits that haven't been dealt with, you might. I was like, so which Sith? So you're all the Sith, but there's possibly if because Disney's gonna try bringing EU stuff. I mean, this is basically a rip off of Legacy of the Force and Dark Empire with worse ride. I mean, Dark Empire was already controversial in the first place because of you know the Emperor coming back. Everything else was highly praised, but it's like, so you did the part of the story that people hated because you can't come up with a villain. Like, I don't know. Maybe explain why Ray is overpowered with no training, but I don't know. Here's an idea. How about she has force psychosis and that Abeloth is involved and she's about to go crazy because of force psychosis? Like how Thea the Jedi did? You know, it'll actually explain why she's overpowered. You know, just saying it would have actually made sense. Then you have to explain how she got there, got to the mall, whatever. Yeah, it's so freaking stupid. Number 14, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. So while this is not the worst movie, it is the one that did the most damage. Like the one that people were like, "All right, this we have a problem," because like like because like basically like Luke being like depressed or whatever. People like, "Oh, it came from George's outlines. Luke was gonna abandon." Okay, I don't know the exact context behind how why Luke was away in George's outline, where he was like depressed or which would have been stupid, or if he was had to go there for some special training, which would fit his character because he's you know there are times he's left to do train before, like in Empire Strikes Back, and like yeah and you have the whole okay so the whole like battle. It's a chase between the First Order chasing the Resistance. You know, Poe Dameron doing the counterattack against a dreadnought, actually trying to win, but it was like, but yeah, it was like you lost. It was like they took out a dreadnought, and she's like, you lost too. And he's like, I mean, here's a fact. It's a freaking war. People die. You do have to accept that. You don't want needless death. You don't want that, but you do it like, and Leia's fought in the war. Like she's fought in the Galactic Civil War. She knows how war goes. And then the whole like Leia and the Holdo not telling Poe anything, and Poe is someone who should have been in the know, like as concerning his high rank compared to others. And he did the mutiny. He did the mutiny, whatever, because basically Holdo seemed to be doing nothing. You know, it's like, oh yeah, we had this big plan. How about tell people the plan? How about get people ready to get out? And it's like the whole Holdo remover maneuver to go through hyper to jump through hyper to destroy ship, which yeah, it's a bad idea. Like it's like he it was like at that point you could just like you could literally just have an all pilot ship just go into hyperspace and destroy something. Then you have the Ray stuff, like so Ray and Luke Luke doesn't want to help and then he says the Jedi's to end and like and so you have Ray and Kylo Ren talking through the Force. Kylo saying that Luke tried to kill him because he sensed the dark side corrupting him. Luke tried to kill his nephew in his sleep. Like, and that's after trying to that's after they're doing everything could to redeem Vader. It's like, so after redeeming Vader, you're just gonna try and murder your nephew? Yeah, do you want to have that conversation with Leia and Han? Like Han, like here's the thing. I don't think either one of them would be happy about it. I mean, because in the EU, like in Dark Empire, when the Emperor tried to the Emperor was trying to kill Han shot the Emperor in the clone body in the head, and of course, yeah, some Jedi, I think it was Master Brand, absorbed basically absorbed a Sidious's spirit, whatever, and like uh Han was I don't think Han and Leia would accept it. It's like, yeah, I felt the dark side tempting him. Like the conversation, like, wait, so did he actually do something? Well, no, but he felt that he was being tempted, so he didn't do anything, and you killed him. Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's like Luke would never do that. Like, oh, it's like, It's like, but it's character development. You gotta show me. It was like, you gotta justify the low point. You gotta justify the highs and the lows. What character development led to this? I mean, like for with Jason Solo in the Expand universe, like the amount of character development that led to him becoming Darth Kaitis, it was a lot of character development, and like across multiple book series from New Jedi Order, Darkness trilogy, then and Legacy of the Force. Like it was multiple years worth of storytelling that led to it. Like, and you have the whole Kylo saying, "Let the past die, kill you have to." Yeah. So Star Wars was not dead after this, but definitely foretold the eventual death of Star Wars. Which I would say happened with Kenobi. Um, but yeah, even though it wasn't dead after this, Star Wars is at like 50% health after this released. Like this is a terrible movie. Like, and you had your Snoke theory sucks. I was like, it's like Ryan Johnson, your movie sucks. Like it's like we want to subvert the expectations. Do you know what we expect? A good movie with Star Wars. We expect Star Wars to have a good movie. You definitely subverted those expectations, Ryan Roundhead Johnson. Like freaking prick. Number 13, The Mandalorian and Grogu. So yeah, this one sucks. I mean, they wasted Zeb. Like Zeb in Rebels is actually a cool character. Like, and of course, Din Djarin in the first season of Mandalorian was cool. I would say also in the second one. Third season, not so much. Grogu, he's a gimmick. Gimmick characters only work so much, and like you know, generally gimmick characters should not be main characters. They should be like kind of like like they should be side characters that don't appear as much. I mean, like and like at the because that's all he was. He was a gimmick. There wasn't anything else. Like in South Park with Kenny. Kenny McCormick famously dies in a lot of episodes. Like basically the first 5 seasons, he died like almost every episode he appeared in. And there, like the joke in the first Christmas episode was that was the first time he didn't die, and so that was a gimmick with him. And they got rid of him, for the last act of each episode. But it's like, but there was also more to Kenny than just that gimmick. And you'll say it would, you know, Cartman be like, "Screw you guys, I'm going home." But like with every gimmick character, and like if a character is just a gimmick, they shouldn't be a main character. And all Grogu is again, he's like it's all for all the people like, oh, look at the little baby Yoda. He's so cute. Oh, uh-oh. Did he drop a dookie? Oh, let's hope the dookie's not green like he is. I mean, the little turd. I mean, yeah, Grogu's just like, I don't know if he can't talk. Like, I don't know. Look, Rada Hut, and Rada should be dead. So should Grogu. Like, Rada, so before Mandalore Grogu was like, before it was announced that Rada was in it, I thought Rada was dead. Like my headcanon was that like let's say there was a gang war between the Hutts and the Shadow Collective and Maul Maul like killed Jabba and like that was part of the whole like what led to like Maul losing the Shadow Collective by the time we get the Rebels. Like and maybe it helped the Empire and the Hutts become very close acquainted. Like yeah. Like so I thought like Rada was dead. And honestly, and I think that would have been better. Like, and because that would explain why he's not in the original trilogy. Because that was something I was like, It's like, okay, so in the expand universe, Rada was born 32 BBY. So either shortly before Phantom Menace or shortly after. So you can kind of understand why he's not in Phantom Menace, and Jabba's not in Attack the Clones. You can understand why he's not in Attack the Clones and sing Revenge of the Sith. You can kind of understand that. Um, it's like the Hutts. I guess they developed, so he was still a baby, even though he was 10 years old in the Clone Wars movie, and and Rada was like more out there in the open with people than most Hutlings were as babies, because like a lot of Hutts kept their kids away for safety reasons. No, like Rada was more out there. So I mean, it's like they had to explain why Rada was not in the original trilogy because he's not. I mean, A New Hope, Jabba's appearance is a deleted scene, so there's that. At least in the original theatrical cut. Of course, in the special editions, they did put that scene back in with CGI Jabba. And of course, Jabba's not in Empire Strikes Back, but he is in Return of the Jedi. Okay, where's Rada? I mean, like Rada should be dead. And as far as Grogu, here's how Grogu should be done. If someone were to actually fix Star Wars, besides the Rada change, what I think should be happening to Grogu is that he should die during Operation Nightfall in the Jedi Temple. Like, and so basically when Keller and Beck goes to try to save him, Darth Vader appears, kills Beck and whatever Jedi are with him, and then he kills Grogu. Now, some people are like, oh no, we don't want Grogu to die. Well, Anakin killed a bunch of freaking younglings in Revenge of the Sith. Do you ever remember that? He killed younglings. It's like, I mean, and technically was the same age as Anakin, so like he was born the same year as Anakin Skywalker, like 41 BBY, because he was 50 years old in 9 ABY when the first season of Mandalorian takes place. As far as the twins, I was like the twins, okay, they're just Hutts. That's fine. I mean, now I have an issue about Hutts speaking Galactic Basic, because they can generally they speak Huttese and Java's Novas. They can speak Basic, but they speak Huttese because they consider Huttese to be a superior language. So it's like they only speak Basic if someone's important, is if they either respect someone enough or fear someone enough to where they'll actually speak Basic. That's why the twins spoke Basic when they were scared of Mando, but they spoke Huttese when they weren't. Rada spoke Basic the whole time because you know, he didn't have that kind of arrogance. But yeah, but it's like, and the whole coin was like wasted. It was like, what's the point of this villain? Like, okay, like, well, it's kind of like, what's the point of like the Huts helping, like, telling that, like, was like if they were working and they wanted Rada, like, there was no need for that. Like it was kind of points like what was the point of this plan? All they got was now Hutta got bombed by the New Republic, which is not something that generally happens. Like in the EU, like basically the Republic, whether it's the New Republic or the Republic from like the prequel era, y- you know attacking the Huts, like attacking now Hutta. That is a big move that none of them were really willing to do. Not even the Empire was willing to do that. But in the EU, like generally, if they go after the Huts, if they don't go after the Huts, it's like you know basically it's when they're asking for it. Like if the Huts aren't asking for it, they don't mess with the Huts. Same with really with any of the mobsters because that invites a lot of problems. And yeah, and do the whole like was it 15 to 30 minute sequence of Grogu like walking around trying to help Jaren. It's like why? You could have maybe done maybe 5 minutes at most of this, but it's like you didn't need to spend this long. You could just, I mean, they could just done a montage. Like literally, just do a freaking montage. And it's like, okay, grab some stuff. Okay, he, you know, finds something. Maybe overhears about an antidote, grabs the antidote, goes, boom. And like the whole like Jarn showing his helmet because Pedro Pascal wants his face shown. I mean, he's like, we disgraced you, and he's like, not if I kill you. And it's like now Imba was like wasn't didn't have to be killed because he wasn't there. He didn't see Jarn's face, and Radha's eyes were closed from the torture, so he didn't see it either. It was just the twins that saw it, so nothing that could be. So basically, it was just them that had to die. And yeah, yeah. So the New Republic attacked Nal Hutta. That's gonna be a big deal when it comes to you better. I was like, if other huts are around, like Durga, Gorga, um, Borga, like or Zorba, if Jabba's father is still alive, you know, there's gonna be some. It's gonna cause some problems. But yeah, this is a bad movie. Number 12, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. A better day for this would be Fool's Gold. Because when this released, a lot of hype happened, and then, well, then we had what came after it. You know, yeah, I mean, yeah, Han Solo basically walking into a lightsaber, Rey being overpowered despite no training, and people were hoping there was going to be an explanation. We know what happens after this. Finn was marketed as being the Jedi character. Of course, that didn't happen. Although, yeah, he's allegedly force sensitive as of episode 9. But, like, basically, he's just a Cal Katarn ripoff. Like, the whole. And yes, you have the whole, like, former Stormtrooper who becomes allies with in George's outlines. There's a lot we don't know about those outlines. There's a lot of questions. Of course, BB-8 is supposed to be the marketing character, the action figure character. Same thing with Phasma. Like Phasma was like the character whose villains there doesn't do much. He'll sell toys. Obviously, that's not much the case now. As far as she can't really sell that character can't sell toys, and like made less of an impact than Maul and Boba Fett. People say they were in it in their respective films too little, but they actually did so. And Kylo Ren, being a knockoff Jason Solo, and you have Leia and Han being separated, you know, for whatever reason, and Leia being a general, not princess. Like, you know, I think it's the whole. So they're called the Resistance, but thing is, it's like the New Republic's the main power. Like the First Order is not the main power, so people are like, what's the deal? Why is there a resistance? I mean, I know there's some novel that explains is that like the New Republic like didn't take the First Order threat seriously, and due to a treaty, they couldn't necessarily go into like open warfare with the First Order. Like, so the Resistance just made of New Republic soldiers that left the New Republic to form an independent group. Now that New Republic secretly funded them as a way to get around it, you know, of course you had Star Killer Base, which is implied to be Elum. So yeah, so the Jedi temple, or the planet where Jedi get their hybrid crystals, gets blown up in Episode 7. And of course, Hazian Prime gets blown up. Now it's Hazian Prime because someone said basically was brought up that destroying Coruscant might not be a good idea. And Coruscant doesn't even appear in this trilogy, like unless it's like an episode not like Coruscant not even a factor. And you have no explanations. Where's Lando? Where's Wedge? Where's like anyone from Rogue Squadron? Like the thing is, they had George's outlines, which whatever flaws those had, I guarantee those were better than what we got. So they threw George's outlines away and didn't have a plan. You know, yeah. And of course, we know that they got rid of the EU, and in 2014, like a little over a year before this released, and that wasn't as newsworthy then because the EU was relatively niche. Now it going away was annoying, and because I mean, look, if you like, as far as the stuff that was made under Disney, the best stuff was the EU. As far as what we would call Disney Star Wars, which was after that, after the EU got shut down, like basically the best stuff was like that Phineas and Ferb special. This film, Force Awakens, like in retrospect, like it got a lot of praise in. It sucks. It's not good. It is terrible, right? It just repeats like the old, like some old plot points, like a giant death, like super weapon. You know, Kylo Ren being the son of Han and Leia, and he's called Ben. Like he's not like which why they name him after Obi Wan. That was more like because you had Ben Skywalker in the EU, Luke's son. I mean, Bale would have actually made more sense because Bale raised Leia, or they could call him Jason or Anakin. Of course, Anakin solo being evil. I don't know how that would have gone. But yeah, they had so many things, and they wasted so much potential. And like 3PO was like, "Oh, you recognize me because radar. We recognize you, 3PO. Han's not stupid. Yeah, we know you have a red arm for whatever reason." And R2 shut himself off. Was like, and Luke, he didn't want to be found, yet there was a map to his location. I mean, that's kind of retarded. It's like, why does he have a map to his location if he doesn't want to be found? You would think that, and R2 shut himself off until a piece of the map could be found. It's like, why? Like, it's so freaking stupid. But yeah, this was a bad movie. Number 11, Solo Star Wars Story. So this has, Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo, Donald Glover as, Lando Calrissian, Emilia Clarke as Kira. So this, has Han Solo being a street rat on Corellia. When he enlists in the Imperial military, he doesn't have a last name, but so since he's by himself, the guy calls him Solo. Yeah, stupid origin. Of course, he enlists. He's not able to be a pilot, and he saves Chewie. He's arrested as a deserter. Joins the gang of thieves, like led by Woody Harrelson's character, Tobias Beckett, and of course they're working for Crimson Dawn, which Kira's like second command of that. You have Dryden Voss is the head of it at this point. Now we don't know um if Dryden Voss is related to Quinlan Voss. I predict if Mal Shalor gets I predict Mal Shalor season 2 will have him revealed to be a relative of Quinlan Voss, just to put more member berries in that, and that could explain why Voss was interested in Sith artifacts or whatever. So yeah, it shows like Kira being Han's childhood friend, girlfriend, whatever, and like basically had like so you had Maul randomly appearing for where like so Crimson Dawn's revealed to be part of Shadow Collective. Now whether that point it was just Crimson Dawn or you still had the Black Suns and the Pikes involved, I don't know. Like so, like, and of course they're setting up like some for a sequel where it was a Solo 2 or it was gonna be a Maul movie, whatever. And people who hadn't watched the shows were shocked to see Maul return. And people were like, "Wait, what? Did this guy get cut in half?" Yeah, I mean they've never explained why Maul survive like is alive. They should explain it. But yeah, it's not good. It's not the worst of the it's not the worst of like the bad Disney ones, but it's like it's not good. Like it's basically nothing. And of course, it was the first Star Wars movie to lose money. It lost money. I'm sure that's embarrassing. Of course, that was right after the Last Jedi controversy. Then you had Avengers: Infinity War, Deadpool 2 releasing around the same time. So it did have competition, but it also didn't help that you had Rise of Sky. Oh, you had Last Jedi releasing a few months before. So yeah, this movie was not good. Number 10, Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. So this was one like the made for TV movies that George Lucas did. Um, Basically, to capitalize on the merch for Ewoks because Ewoks were created to sell merch, which is why some people don't like the Ewoks. I don't care about the Ewoks. I don't. Now, as far as this movie, the acting isn't good. The story isn't that great. It's whatever. Mostly like family strand on Endor. You know, befriend the Ewoks, have to fight some monster or whatever. And yeah, it's whatever. It's a simple story. It's not like doesn't really cause any major problems. It's just kind of boring. Number 9, Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. So this was like the sequel to Caravan of Courage. Another direct to TV one. It's not good. It's better than Caravan of Courage. Like the writing is better, like slightly. Now the acting still has its problems. I mean, like doesn't have the acting level of the original trilogy or the prequels. But like, yeah, so it's not good. Like it's not completely like it's not like some offensive pile of garbage like the sequel trilogy on Mando and Grogu were. But it's like I wouldn't say it's good. Number 8, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. So this one's about like how the Death Star plans were stolen. Now, like so in the expand universe, you had multiple stories regarding the Death Star plans being stolen. Like now, how they explained it in the EU is that like yeah, there was just the Death Star plans were like in pieces and different pieces were stolen at different different plans. So yeah, of course they call it Operation Skyhook. Of course you have Pal Katarn's mission to Denuda in Dark Forces, the Battle of Top Rawa, you know, in like in I think that was in like the Han Solo trilogy. Of course, you had what happened in the Death Star prison break, then the Pulse massive battle, and you had like other like other books, comics, whatever that went over it. So yeah, like basically you had like the 2-year operation of different points in dealing the Death Star plans, and so yeah, and that's how I explain it. So it's a long story that was better written. Rogue One, it's a decent movie. Of course, the last act of it is well praised due to like Darth Vader just appearing and killing like so many people. Like, it really is like basically you have like it's just like Darth Vader just wrecking people. And that like the hallway scene. Of course, you had people trying to replicate that to have their own hallway scene. And you had Jyn Erso, Cassian Andor. Of course, this led to the spin-off Andor that I'm not a fan of. I know a lot of people like Andor. I'm not. I don't. But it did get praised. It just got low ratings, but that's because it came after Kenobi. But yeah, Felicity Jones, Jyn Erso, Diego Luna, Cassian Andor, Ben Mendelsohn, Orson Craig. Diane Shrew Inway, Mads Mikkelsen as Galen Erso, Alan Tudyk as K2SO, Riz Ahmed as Buddy Rook, and Jane Wynn as Baze Malbus. And you had like of course you had Mon Mothma, Bail Organa being in this. This is a decent movie. The CGI Tarkin always looked weird. Now Mendelsohn is freaking awesome as Krennic, and Luna and Jones are whatever. They're fine. I mean, Mendelssohn's the highlight, and the music by Michael Giacchino. Very good composer, and Gareth Edwards directed. You know, did a good job with it. So yeah, this is a decent movie. Number seven, Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie. So this was the movie that released in 2008. It's kind of like a pilot film for the Clone Wars TV show. This is where Ahsoka Tano made her Star Wars debut as Anakin's Padawan. You had Daryl, banter starring. You had Matt Lanter played Anakin, doing very well. Tom Kane, may he rest in peace, playing Yoda. Admiral Yularen, who's from A New Hope, and of course, also voicing the narrator. Which the opening sequence where it showed like footage and then you had like speaking. It was a cool concept introduced, with Kevin Kiner's music and Kiner being you doing great arrangements of John Williams music. James Earl Taylor as Obi-Wan, dude, he's freaking awesome. And you had Samuel Jackson returning as Mace Windu, Christopher Lee returning as you know Count Dooku before Corey Burton took over for the show, and may Christopher Lee rest in peace. Yeah, Captain Rex, make his debut where basically he was a derivative character of Alpha 17. Now, the reason they made Rex is so with Anakin and Ahsoka, and then with R2, like if you just say R2, a lot of times in books, comics, where when they just say R2, they spell it Artoo. They don't just put R2, like letter R, then 2. Now, if they say R2D2, they do use the, you know, R2 slash dash D2. They just say R2, they spell R2 as a word, Artoo. So if they had Alpha 17, it'd been like you had a bunch of characters whose names start with A. So they made Rex to kind of a different letter. Yeah, and that was like one of the things I remember on the DVD. Like in the DVD, like you could have like some behind the scenes stuff shown in subtitles, no speaking. But it was like some behind the scenes stuff shown, and it was actually kind of cool to see like how some of the production was done, like how they made like Teth and like some of the designs for some of the like the animations, whatever. And I like the animation style, like it's and of course the show improves on it over time, especially by the time you get to season 7. But yeah, so Zero the Hut for a lot of people, this is the first Hut people heard speaking Galactic Basic, even though all Huts have the actual physical capability of doing it. Generally, you don't see it happen, for because generally most of them consider Huttese to be a better language. So and but Zero's on course, like you could kind of understand why Zero would be speaking Basic a lot because he's at the Republic capital, you could kind of understand there. And his little like conspiracy with Dooku to kidnap Rada. This is where Rada debuted. The baby hut. You know, and you had Anakin having to confront like his views of the Hutts because of his past being a slave for Gardula, which I'm sure Gardula would um be interested to hear about her former slave saving Jabba's son, considering at least in the EU, the Besani clan, the Desolate clan, were big rivals. You know, they didn't really like each other. So, a Besani clan member's former slave, helping saving the son of the head of the Desolate clan. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing. I mean, but Anakin knew who Jabba was anyway because of Jabba ruled Tatooine. But yeah, the battles were cool between the clones and the battle droids. The way Obi-Wan was able to handle the battle of Christophsis was like how he just like delay things, how he negotiated with General Losum was kind of funny. And then and of course, one of the things about this, you had Anakin's duel with Dooku. So okay, so I do like this movie. That being said, it should not be considered canon because of the fight with Dooku. Like, because Anakin and Dooku are not supposed to meet in between Attack the Clones or Revenge of the Sith. Now, with it before Revenge of the Sith released, there were stuff that had Dooku appear, and then once Dooku appeared, they either like had to find a way to explain it, like retcons like a different character, like New Droid Army did, or you know, or like find or just say, yeah, yeah, this thing just doesn't count. You know, so this movie is good, but I don't think it should count as canon. Number 6, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So, yeah, this is like the worst of the prequel trilogy. Most people kind of agree with it. Amongst the six, like the only six that should count as canon, this is the worst one. Most people would agree with that. Now, I think it's still very good. I mean, yes, you have some dialogue like, I don't like sand. You could excuse Anakin's lame excuse of a pickup line. I mean, and yeah, the whole people say the whole love story with Anakin and Padme maybe a little rest. That's understandable criticism, but I would kind of agree with that. But yeah, of course, Ewan McGregor as Obi Wan, highly praised. Yeah, Tamora, more like Morrison as a Jango Fett. Of course, Yoda when he got his lightsaber. When Yoda pulls out his lightsaber and fights Dooku, because that's the first time we had seen Yoda use a lightsaber. That was a big freaking deal. Like, that was. And Samuel Jackson, his brief fight with Django, he just you know but he had the funny scene of 3PO's head being on Baldroid. That bit actually was funny. Christopher Lee's debut as Count Dooku, you know, done very well. The Battle of Geonosis is freaking awesome. And yeah, of course, the Clone Wars start here. A lot of people would have said the Clone Wars should have started by the end of the first movie in the prequels, which is fair. I still think this is a very good movie. Anakin killing all those Sand people, showing, foreshadowing his eventual fall to the dark side. That was done very well. Yeah, I actually really like this movie. Number 5, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So, biggest reason this is above Attack of the Clones is um you had Liam Neeson's performance as Qui-Gon Jinn. Like, there's a lot more Jar Jar in this one. Jar Jar is the worst part of the prequels. Like, I think most people would agree with that. Episode one has the most Jar Jar, but Qui Gon kind of compensates for the Jar Jar's inclusion. So it's like, and yeah, this movie got a lot of backlash on release. Of course, Jake Lloyd was criticized for his performance of Anakin. I thought it was for a child actor, it wasn't bad. Like I thought it was pretty good for a child actor's performance. I mean, that is admittedly a low bar set. Of course, the criticisms of Jar Jar, I'm not going to get in that, but like I would say the media deserves more blame for what happened than the fans do. I'll just put it that way. And Liam Neeson, freaking awesome. Ewan McGregor, freaking awesome. Darth Maul, even though he wasn't in a lot, when he came in, when he like he makes an impact when he's in. Ray Park, doing all his stuff. Natalie Portman, this is how she got big, like how she got famous. And yeah, so Ian McDermott playing you know Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious. And even though fans of the original trilogy knew that Palpatine was Sidious, they don't directly say it until Episode 3, which it's kind of genius. Even though the fans know, they kind of somewhat left it a mystery, but in a way that didn't treat the audience like they're retards. And yeah, thought this was a I thought this is a really good movie. Number four, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So this is objectively the best of the prequel trilogy. I don't think there's a single, but there are very few people who would disagree with that. I mean, the visuals. I don't know if any movie has used CGI and green screen better than Revenge of the Sith. I don't know. I mean, Hayden Christensen does a really good acting job. You had obviously his the fight between Obi-Wan and Vader was like one of the highlights. I remember when the trailers were coming out for this, like that was a big part of the marketing was the duel on Mustafar. Like that was a big freaking deal. And like at that point, I like when those trailers came out, I had never seen a Star Wars movie before, but I had heard of Star Wars, but I had not watched it. I actually read the novelizations for all movies before watching them. You know, Revenge of the Sith novelization is actually very good. like like it is considered to be one of the best movie novelizations ever. Anyway, but yeah, this was a like he had Samuel Jackson's performance as Mace Windu, with his fight with Sidious being awesome. Yoda versus Sidious in the Senate chamber, that was a big deal. Like, of course, you had how the Republic became the Empire, and Padme, you know, yes, her death. So her death is basically heavily inspired by the death of Chani in Dune Messiah. And if Dune Part 3 actually follows that part of the series of the novel series, that is how Chani's gonna die in Dune Part 3, just so you know. The book's around 60 years old. It's not much of a spoiler at this point. Chani dies giving birth to twins. Padme dies giving birth to twins. Now, this movie, they say was she died from sadness. Now, they could have, you could say they may could have done the more of actually saying like, she was pregnant with twins, but she was force choked when she was about to give labor, and she was force choked and fell to the ground. Which when you're about to give, I guess if a woman's about to give birth, something like that is probably not a good thing. So, and she was about to go into labor, and She was just force choked, basically dropped to the ground. I mean, that is a. I feel that would actually cause a physical toll when you have that kind of trauma happen, like actual like force choking and drop to the ground, and when you go and live shortly after. I feel like that would actually cause physical problems that you could, from a medical perspective, could lead to death. And of course, you had Obi-Wan taking Luke to Owen Baru. Leia going to Bail Organa. His wife Breha, and like the Battle Coruscant is freaking awesome. Obviously Dooku appears really in the very beginning where he gets killed by Anakin. Where despite what the other media would show us, Revenge of the Sith is the first time they had met, Anakin and Dooku had met since Attack of the Clones. So by the holocron standards, which was used back in the EU days to help with continuity errors to figure out what took priority. So anything that showed Anakin and Dooku meeting before in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith technically should not count as canon, and that includes the Clone Wars movie, the anytime in the TCW TV show where they meet, in the video game, comic book, novel, those shouldn't count as canon. You know, I think there's a video game called New Droid Army that went over that, like actually had like it released in between before Revenge of the Sith, but after Attack of the Clones, where you had Anakin fight Dooku. When Revenge of the Sith came out, they had to figure out how to deal with it. So there's like a short story came out that had explained it was like a doppelganger. Like I don't know if it was supposed to be a clone or just someone that looked like Dooku. I don't know, but like but basically they retconned to where that wasn't Dooku, so they kept it where New Droid Army was still canon in the EU. And I was like, yeah, you were everyone was subservient to the movies, you know, like to those six movies. But yeah, this is definitely the best of prequels. A very good movie. Number three, Star Wars Episode 6, Return the Jedi. So yeah, this ended the original trilogy. You had Han Solo being saved from Jabba's palace, and you had the Battle of Endor. You had Luke redeeming Darth Vader. The Emperor made his like debut, like like basically not just like a like a like actual physical debut, like in person, where Luke confronts him. You had Vader. The duel between Luke and Vader is freaking awesome. Had like Lando's little Death Star run. You had where he and Wedge like destroyed like the Death Star, and like you had Jaws Palace. Of course, you had the slave Leia outfit. So like basically that like so like yes, it's slave Leia. It's not Hut Slayer Leia. Of course, Boba Fett. He fell into a Sarlacc pit. Now in both EU and Disney, he did survive. You know, in the EU, I think it's like if I recall, it was like Boba is like the Sarlacc found me indigestible. Yeah, and of course Jabba. This is so in theaters. It's where Jabba made his debut. Yes, you had the deleted scene from A New Hope. Um, with special editions, and and yeah, this you had the Ewoks. Ewoks they were created to sell toys. That's what they were. They were basically teddy bears. Like and a lot. And of course, there's possibly they were gonna do like they were gonna have it be on Kashyyyk instead of Endor, and have it be the Wookiees instead of the Ewoks. That would have been cool. I mean, but it's whatever. Like it's what like having Ewoks doesn't like damage the movie really. I mean, yeah, it's still like cool fight, cool battle, like a very well written story. Like, yeah, it's definitely like probably it's like one of the best endings to a film trilogy like ever. Like one of the best. I mean, obviously the best is Return of the King for Lord of the Rings, but this is still a really good movie. Number two, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, or it was called when it first released, Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, this movie is just so freaking good. Like, I mean, it is so good. Like all stuff on Tatooine, you had the Battle of Yavin, the Death Star. You had, you know, this is where they established stuff like the Force with the Jedi, the well, they weren't. I mean, yeah, the Empire. Like, so the Sith. Well, the terminology wasn't used in the movies yet. That wasn't used in the movies until Phantom Menace, of course. Now, I mean, there were novels or comics that had Sith used, but anyway. But yeah, so you had Darth Vader, you had Leia, Han Solo. I mean, Han Solo was like Harrison Ford was already kind of famous, but this was kind of like his big break. Of course, definitely Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher. This was their big breaks. I mean, R2D2, C3PO. They were like some like your merchandise characters. With their banter. Even like R2 just talked in beeps. You still see effective banter between him and C3PO. And you had all the X-wings. Of course you had Biggs. And the thing is like Biggs is barely in the movie, but they make his death actually mean something. Even though he's only mentioned briefly in the beginning, but then he appears at the end. Now there's a deleted scene in from the beginning movie with where Biggs and Luke talk. And the Death Star just looks freaking awesome. And like the way like they do the special effects, like is so good. Of course, John Williams doing his score really elevates it. And yeah, I mean, this is one of the greatest movies of all time, and it started the greatest IP in entertainment history. Number one, Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, this is the best one. It is objectively the best one. I mean, you can make an argument for A New Hope, but I mean, dude, Empire is just better. Like the Battle of Hoth, like the best like what one of the most well done battles in all Star Wars. You had all stuff on Bespin, Dagobah. You had Yoda making his debut. Of course, you have the whole bit the big Darth Vader being Luke's father being the biggest twist in cinema history. I mean, really everything that comes after this, as far as Star Wars goes, is basically was driven by that twist of Vader being Luke's father. And then when the movie before the movie released, the only people who knew about that twist were George Lucas, Irvin Kershner, Mark Hamill, and James Earl Jones. I think that's it. Because David Prowse was told to say Obi-Wan killed your father. So that's what a lot of the people in production thought it's the case. Okay, the big twist is Obi-Wan killed Anakin. And this is where you first hear the name Anakin Skywalker, like in the movies. But then, like when it was revealed that Vader was Anakin, people were like, "Wait, what? What?" It was like, "Oh, what?" But yeah, I mean, this was such a. I mean, of course, this was where you had a lot of the character development for Luke and Han. Luke, probably a little cocky, a little immature. Of course, he trains under Yoda, and of course, what happens to him? What you get his hand cut off by Vader. That really forces a lot of character development for him that we see in between, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Now we don't see a lot of it on screen, but you could tell the way they did that he actually developed. And of course, you had Han Solo's character from like being kind of like a morally gray, selfish, like smuggler to being a rebel hero. And yeah, you had obviously he and Leia fall for each other. You know, like basically this is like the greatest movie of all time. It is like the best story, best score, like one of the best scores ever. Like it is literally like the greatest film ever made. And that's it. Did y'all like this video? Did you dislike this video? Do you agree with my rankings for all these movies? Do you disagree with my rankings? Do you have your own rankings? You can put on that in the comments, and like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Look forward to the next video.